Alright, are y'all ready to rank some cartoon teachers? I don't know, I just felt like it. So, I'm gonna come out and say this right now. I was originally gonna save this for my number one best entry, but I'll just say this right here and now. No kidding, without one character on this list, this video probably would have never happened. I'm not even kidding with you. It's not because this is a bad idea or anything, but I never really had this in mind. In fact, when it came down to my YouTube channel, never once did I think, hey, what if I did a video where I ranked certain cartoon or anime teachers, and just talk about them for at least a few minutes. By the way, yeah, I said anime. I'm gonna say this also right here and now. There are only 2 anime characters on this list, so don't worry if you think that this is gonna be overloaded with anime teachers. Also, this was supposed to be a top 10 favorite and least favorite, but I had to shorten it down to 5 because the best list was kind of easy, I guess, with like 1 or 2 entries missing, but for the worst list, if you want to say that, that is, even though there aren't any characters I would say that are the absolute worst, just wait for my reasoning, or skip to a specific mark. I'll have the bookmarks up for this video. The least favorites were a bit of a stretch, so yeah, I shortened it down to 5. But before I get to both number 1s later on this list, I will give out some honorable and dishonorable mentions, so keep an eye out, I guess. Like I said, just check out the bookmarks of the video. Also, this might sound a bit disappointing, but I'm not actually going to do any fancy transitions for each segment. I'm going to go from 5th least favorite to 5th favorite to 4th least favorite, and so on. So with all that said and done, let's just get this started. Starting off with the 5th least favorite. For the purposes of this list, when I think of a character that's actually in the least favorite category, it's either a character that I at least liked at one point that I don't care about too much anymore, or a character that's just so forgotten and uninteresting. I'll get to my reasons for each segment. But also, there's nobody in the least favorite section that I outright hate or even despise, so yeah, like I said, this is a least favorite thing rather than a best and worst scenario, although if you really want to, then yeah, you could consider this section of the list to be the worst, but that's going by a stretch here. Alright, so without further ado, there are a lot of teachers to choose for this list, and I only had a limited selection of the characters that I at least have heard of online. Or I've known them for years. Anyway, so for my 5th least favorite, that actually goes to Mrs. Puff from SpongeBob. This is definitely going to be a very weird choice, but hear me out on this one. Back when I was a fan of SpongeBob, Mrs. Puff wasn't really a really memorable character to me in my opinion. However, I've known her long enough and I at least like her to the point where she could easily be in 5th place. She's close to getting an honorable mention rather than actually not even being on this list. Also, for the times I've seen her, well, okay, when I was watching SpongeBob quite a lot, I didn't really love her compared to some of the other female characters I could think of, like maybe Sandy or Karen or someone like that. Although I will say, I will give her a lot of credit for actually dealing with SpongeBob's nonsense for so long. But what I just said doesn't really apply so much since I don't really care about SpongeBob anymore. I mentioned it a bunch of times already, but I want that to sink in for why she's actually way lower on the list. I could place her higher because I honestly don't care about the show anymore, but I at least liked her to the point where she actually deserves to be at the very bottom of this list. But you know what, actually, she is lucky to not rank any higher because, man, the other 4 entries in the least favorite section had some stiff competition, but we'll get there when we get there. So now let's enter the 5th favorite. Alright, so like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I'm only including 2 anime characters on this list. Because extending this to 10 was a bit of a challenge because I only had 1 entry left and some of the characters I only included because I at least like them, so yeah, I limited it down to 5. So in 5th place is Roxanne from Pokemon. Even though she is a gym leader, she is technically a teacher too, so she does technically count for this list. Although, to be honest with you, since Pokemon is actually on this list, you would expect it to be a lot higher, but believe it or not, I don't have a lot to talk about with Roxanne. She is cool, I do like her nose pass that can evolve into Probopass. She's an interesting character in general, and yeah, that's about it. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't really have a lot more to say. She's probably one of the more least memorable Pokemon characters, but hey, in my opinion, she deserves a spot on the list. Now let's enter the 4th least favorite. I'm gonna cut straight to the chase with this one. Number 4 is Mr. Garrison from South Park. Yeah, I had to mention South Park at some point on this list. I'm sure you're probably wondering why Mr. Garrison isn't at number 1 because I don't care about South Park, and you know my reasons. But honestly, Mr. Garrison, in my opinion, doesn't deserve number 1 because unlike my number 1, which we will definitely get to for why I have my reasons, I at least liked him before I gave up on the show. He was funny, I liked Mr. Hat and Mr. Twig, and he was funny. That's about it. I don't know. Now, if I didn't despise South Park, then I would have easily switched him around with Mrs. Puff, but no, he has to rank slightly lower. Plus, I hate to say this, he's kind of one of those cartoon teachers that you kind of have to recognize. but I can't believe I'm saying that, but no, wait till I actually get to the main inspiration for this list. Anyway, let's head on to my fourth favorite. This next entry is actually going to be a villain, believe it or not. It actually goes to Mr. Crocker from the Fairly Odd Parents. He's funny, a great villain in my opinion. And honestly, there hasn't really been a moment where I outright hated Mr. Crocker. Although, I can't really place him any higher because the top 3 are not only better, but they're just more memorable, to be honest with you. Even though I still love the Fairly Odd Parents, yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Crocker just hasn't really been that fondly remembered. Yeah, I don't really have a lot more to say, so let's head on over to my third least favorite. So just like Roxanne, who technically is a teacher and is eligible for this list, this is actually going to be the same thing, but for a non-anime character. It actually goes to Peggy Hill from King of the Hill. Unlike Mr. Garrison and Mrs. Puff, where I at least like them, Peggy is a character that I just find kinda boring, although I do understand why a fair amount of people, to even a lot of people, don't like her as a character, and I can actually understand why. Probably the biggest example of her not exactly being a quote-unquote good teacher, if you want to say that sentence, actually has to go to Lupe's Revenge, where she completely butchers her Spanish. But again, I don't hate her since she's just more boring than anything else. Plus, she's not even the most memorable character of King of the Hill to me, in my opinion. So yeah, she may not exactly be the best teacher, but hey, I can at least say she is a good parent. So yeah, that's about it. Let's move on to my third favorite. Okay, this is definitely going to be the weirdest choice on the list, since this is a character you probably don't immediately think of when it comes to cartoon teachers, but in my opinion, she's surprisingly memorable enough to the point where I would have to place her in the middle of the best list. So my third favorite, believe it or not, has to go to Madame Gazelle from Peppa Pig. I can't believe I'm mentioning her again, but yeah, hear me out on this one. I've always been interested and fascinated with Madame Gazelle in general. She is a nice character, and I do like what she actually does for her students. Like doing a fun run to fix the school roof, having an international day, and so on, but can I be honest with you, she's not even the most iconic Peppa Pig character. But for her role in the series as a teacher, she actually does quite a great job. I could talk about her more, but honestly, just go look up an episode that has her in it, and you could probably understand why she's in third place. So let's move on to my second least favorite. I'm sorry, Rick and Morty fans, but Mr. Goldenfold is in second place in this list. He is just such a forgotten character, and believe it or not, he's not even really a character I look forward to when it comes to Rick and Morty. Now, whenever I see him on screen, I do tolerate him perfectly fine, yet he can also be pretty funny. Like in the episode where Rick and Morty go inside his dream, that goes into Mrs. Pancake's dream, then that Centaur's dream, then Scary Terry's dream, and yeah, that episode was just funny though. At most, I could say he's decent, but at least I could say he's just uninteresting. Now, I will say this is probably just because I'm not a big Rick and Morty fan anymore, so maybe this is why I can actually not exactly like him that much. But even back then when I was a big fan, Mr. Goldenfold still wasn't exactly a character I could say I outright love. Definitely tolerable, but compared to the previous re-entries where they at least had some good quality I can mention, Mr. Goldenfold has nothing. Except the Dream episode that I mentioned, he doesn't really have anything that makes him stand out compared to any other Rick and Morty character. I'll admit, there are some times he can be funny, but that's as far as I'm gonna go. So yeah, I don't really have a lot more to say. So let's head on over to my second favorite. We are now on to the other anime character that I actually mentioned, and this is a bit higher than some people might expect. Well, okay, maybe not, but next up is Aizawa from My Hero Academia. This is a character that I don't exactly love by screen time, but rather just by seeing and playing as him. He is enjoyable in My Hero Ultra Rumble and My Hero 1's Justice 2. But believe it or not, from the many clips I've seen of the series since I haven't actually seen full episodes, I haven't actually seen a ton of Aizawa. Even though I know who he is. He's kind of one of those characters you don't really see or hear too much about, but you kind of love him or her no matter what. I guess if I could describe him in one word, it would be fascinating. Although not gonna lie, his design is pretty badass looking. If I did see a bit more of him, I might have more to talk about, but no, I really don't. So that pause was for the bookmark, so don't worry about it. Let's move on to my honorable and dishonorable mentions. Now, I have a lot of honorable mentions, so I'm just going to try and keep my opinions about them relatively quick. Plus, I might give one or two reasons why they couldn't even make it onto the list. First up is Miss Hoover from The Simpsons. I know a little bit about her, and I heard she's kind of a bad character-ish. She's interesting, but definitely not good enough to be on the favorites list. Miss Baker from Clarence. I haven't seen Clarence in a while, and to be honest, I don't really know what to actually talk about with her. She might have had a shot in the favorite section if I thought about it long enough, but honestly, no, I really don't know what else to talk about with her. I do like her, though. Mr. Ratburn from Arthur. I didn't grow up with Arthur, and I don't really know a ton about it, other than it ran for nearly 20 years. I know Mr. Ratburn is somewhat of a popular character, and I can actually understand why, but because I know very little about him and even Arthur in general, I'm only putting him as an honorable mention. Here we have another Simpsons teacher, Mr. Lacey. He was a one-time character slash villain, and he's interesting, but I legit don't know what to actually talk about with him, since he's been talked about already. Although I think I did see his episode at least once. Miss Keene from the Powerpuff Girls. The original, not the reboot. When I originally extended the favorite list into 10, she actually had a spot on the list, but when I had to cut it down to 5, yeah, she got left out. But honestly, she's just been forgotten compared to the other Powerpuff Girl characters, so I don't really have a lot to talk about with her. I guess she's somewhat iconic, in a way though. Miss Fell from Jimmy Neutron. This is another character I don't really have a lot to talk about since I haven't actually seen her that much. Even though I love Jimmy Neutron, she can actually be pretty funny, I kinda don't really know what to talk about with her. Miss Frizzle from the Magic School Bus. I don't really need to say a lot about this one. Miss Frizzle is good, but she's not top 5 favorite material in my opinion though. This might also be because I'm not the biggest fan of the Magic School Bus, even though I do really like the series. Although she's not even really my favorite character, like in terms of first place that is. She is still definitely good though. And for my final honorable mention, and for the final Simpsons character, we have Mr. Largo. I know his design, but to be honest with you, I barely know anything about him. Other than he's the music teacher, and he actually looks kinda cool, so that's really about it. Now I only have 2 dishonorable mentions. One of them is Miss Simeon from The Amazing World of Gumball. I could have included Mr. Small, Mr. Cornet, or another character like that on the list, but Miss Simeon is the only one I'm actually going to include from Gumball, and she's a character I don't hate, but she's just kind of boring to be honest with you. When I watch her, I don't really feel that much joy. Not because of a bad thing by any means, but I don't know. She's a perfectly tolerable character in my opinion. I guess she can be funny though. And Miss Bitters from Invader Zim is my only other dishonorable mention. Like Mr. Ratburn, I barely know anything about her since I'm not the biggest Invader Zim expert, if you want to say that. I do like the series, but I'm not like super big into it. I know she is a jerk kind of character, but honestly, she's kind of interesting, I guess. But also super forgotten to the point where she could just be completely uninteresting. Alright, so that's that. Let's move on to my number 1, and number 1 may surprise you, but let's get it over with. Okay, I'm technically cheating by including 2 characters in this entry, but they both have nothing to remember. They're both so easily forgotten. Honestly, they're so forgotten that I actually kind of forgot they exist. So, who exactly am I talking about? Well, for my absolute least favorite teachers, this may seem like an absolute odd choice for some people who do know them, but I'm sorry. My absolute least favorite teachers go to Miss Bunty and Mr. Estevez from Max and Ruby. Yes, I'm placing both of them here. If I could talk about at least one of them, I could have probably talked about Miss Bunty for a moment. But they're both too equal in terms of forgotten and uninteresting to the point where I had to include both of them in one entry. Now, if I were to somehow watch an episode with the both of them in it, I could tolerate them perfectly fine. It's how forgotten quickly they can become. They're not iconic enough to the point where I can actually watch the episode that they're from. For an episode where Max and Ruby actually do go to school, I don't even think about them unless they actually pop up on screen. That's how forgotten they are. It's like as soon as the episode's done, they're both gone from my memory. Sure, I can think about them once or twice after the episode's done, but that's really about it. Now, since I haven't really seen an episode that has them in it in so long, no kidding, I really don't know what else to say other than this. These 2 are the most forgotten and unappealing teacher characters I have ever seen. Even back then when Max and Ruby was my favorite franchise for a while, I never really loved these 2 characters enough unlike my number 1 favorite. In fact, my number 1 favorite is not even in the same ballpark compared to this. So you know what, I'm gonna stop talking about them now even though I wouldn't have that much more to talk about to begin with. So let's move on to my actual number 1 favorite. So you may have noticed that we haven't actually run into Bluey yet, since that's my actual favorite franchise of all time. Well, this is the character that actually inspired this list. Cause like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, without her, this video wouldn't have been made in the absolute slightest. So yeah, number 1 goes to Calypso. This is the first and as of right now, only teacher character in all of fiction that I absolutely love. Not romantically, by the way, but in general. There's a comforting, kind, and peaceful vibe I get from Calypso. Then again, she is very comforting, kind, and peaceful in general. The episodes she's in are so memorable to the point where I could actually think of them, like in her debut episode. from typewriter to early baby, etc. I love all the appearances she's in. She could be like one of those characters you could actually reach out to for advice or support or anything like such, and she could probably lend you a helping hand without having anything in return. Even the Glasshouse Primary preschool she's working at is actually pretty memorable, and it's kind of thanks to her, I guess, but then again, it's also because of the kid characters that actually go there too. I mean, yeah, it's the one and only teacher from Bluey, Calypso. I say that because I actually don't really have a lot more to say. Anyway, that's the end of the video. Like I mentioned, this video was completely unexpected, but Calypso inspired this list to happen, and it was actually kind of cool to at least talk about these characters at least once. Although I definitely don't plan on doing another list like this at some point in the future, unless maybe there are some characters I missed out on that could get a shout out or something, but we'll see though. So yeah, I guess that'll do. I'll see y'all later before we do next time, and that'll be all for now.